Commodore Praveen Rajpal is a very well-respected former submariner joining us on this special broadcast. Commodore Rajpal, welcome. Sir, your reading of the US strike on an Iranian frigate in international waters, thousands of ships, I think 2,000 ships were sunk in the Second World War between 1939 and 45, but only this is the fourth in the last 80 years. Your reading of the strike, sir?
Good evening, Gaurav. Great to be on your show. Well, from the submarine point of view, it's a perfect hit. The crew would be very happy. They have managed to sink a ship, supposedly in a war. But was it correct legally? Well, there can be different opinions on that. The ship was in outside the territorial waters of Sri Lanka, about 40 nautical miles. So Sri Lanka had nothing to do with it. The main thing to be considered here is US had backed out of the Milan 26 a few days before actually giving their assent to it. They were probably tracking the ship. The ship, as per the open sources, had a crew of about 180, while actually it should take about 150. So 30 odd sailors were extra, probably taking part in the Milan and going back without any weapons. They probably could never have tracked the submarine. They could never listen to there was a submarine down below, and for the submarine to attack without any reasons, it remains to be, probably whenever there's a judgment on this, it'll come out that did they break the Charter 51 of the United Nations, or was it in any self-defense? The Charter 51 is very clear on this. First of all, there is no war declared by US on this.
Yes.
On Iran, they've just called it epic fury. It's a conflict. So it's not a war. Neither has Iran declared a war. So in such a scenario, was it correct on part of the submarine to do this?
Again, would you see this as a major escalation, and that too not in those territorial waters, but in the Indian Ocean region?
Absolutely correct, because sinking an Iranian ship 2,000 nautical miles, 2,000 miles away from Iran is an escalation. And there is no doubt in that. But was it correct on their part? As I say, it remains to be judged by the historians whenever the question comes up few years, decade later. Was it a correct action on the part of the US submarine to do this or no? Why I say this again
how difficult is it to be in a nuclear-powered submarine compared to a diesel-electric submarine? One, for the benefit of our viewers, very quickly, the difference between the two on technicalities, the silence, the speed, the stealth, and life on board a submarine. How long would the submarine have stayed underwater for a mission like this?
Oh, so you're asking me difference between the two submarines, the conventional submarine and nuclear submarines? There's a huge difference. The conventional submarine runs on diesel engines. It needs to charge its batteries every 12 hours, 14 hours, 15 hours, for which it has to come up to snort, take in the air, run the diesel engines, charge the batteries, and go down again. The depends on how far it can go away from the coast, because the maximum endurance would be limited to about, say, 40, 45 days. But for a nuclear submarine, the endurance is only a human being and the stores that it carries. So as I presume, a submarine here in Indian Ocean, a US submarine would have been away from the base port for more than 3 to 4 months. That's how a nuclear submarine operates. It was probably an SSN, a fast-moving submarine with torpedoes, and it did its job. As I said, the crew would be very proud of having hit a ship, but was it correct or no remains. I leave that question to the historians.
Commodore Rajpal, for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks.